My name is Kadir, and I am the last of the oselot. Not the sleek cats prowling the jungle canopy, but the guardians within it, silent, unseen, and fading into myth. We are the tribe the outsiders rarely spoke of, and when they did, the stories were whispered, filled with a mix of fear and awe. To them, we were spirits, shadows. They were right, in a way. Growing up in the tangled heart of the Amazon, a world of emerald green and dappled sunlight, I learned that our lives were bound to the forest. Not just surviving, but becoming one with it. When I was just a boy, barely tall enough to grip a blow dart, my father, eyes the color of storm clouds, taught me to disappear into the foliage. Breathe, he'd say, voice rough as tree bark, not as a man, but as the wind through the leaves. I didn't understand then, but his wisdom seeped into my bones like sap. Every oselotl child underwent the initiation. It wasn't a celebration, but a test, a brutal carving away of softness. They blindfolded us, spun us until the world was a blur, then abandoned us in the unforgiving heart of the jungle. No food, no water, no weapons, not even the comfort of familiar paths. We were expected to find our own way back, not just as survivors, but as warriors. Days stretched into a delirious haze. My skin prickled, every rustle setting my nerves aflame. Starvation hollowed out my stomach, and thirst made my tongue swell like a rotten fruit. I saw things that might have been feverish imaginings or cunning predators masked by shadows. Yet fear wasn't something to conquer. My elders taught me that it was a compass needle, pointing me towards danger and sharpening my senses. Water was always the first victory. I learned to recognize the subtle lilt of birdsong that meant a stream lay nearby, the smell of damp earth and rotting fruit that led me to life-saving pockets in the bark of ancient trees. Sustenance was more difficult, grubs wriggling beneath decaying logs, tart berries offering a flicker of energy. The true test, though, wasn't just about staying alive. It was about merging with the wildness that birthed us. Every creature in the jungle was a teacher if only I learned to listen. I studied the methodical patience of a jaguar poised to strike, the effortless way monkeys swung through the canopy. From venomous snakes, I learned precision and the value of surprise. When they found me, near delirious and scratched to the bone, it wasn't with pity. There was a glint in my father's weathered eyes, a flicker of something like pride, even. I was handed my first weapon then, a spear of chonta wood, tipped with a piranha tooth. You are not a boy anymore, my father rumbled, his voice echoing the vastness of the forest, you are oselotl. Life as a warrior wasn't about glory or conquest, as the outsiders often thought. It was about balance. We were the silent protectors, the unseen hand against any force that threatened to upend the delicate ecosystem of our home. Poachers learned to fear the silent prick of our poison darts, the rustle that melted back into the trees before they could even raise their rifles. Loggers heard tales of their machinery inexplicably breaking down deep in the forest, of ghostly faces painted with jaguar spots watching them from the shadows. We became legend precisely because we wanted to disappear into it. The fewer our footprints, the safer the jungle, the safer we were. It was a lonely life, often brutal, but ours was a sacrifice born of love for every sun-drenched leaf and creature cloaked in darkness. The forest pulsed in our veins, its rhythm the beat of our own hearts. I'd thought my life would be an endless cycle of patrols, of ambushes laid against intruders, of becoming one with the sprawling green world we'd sworn to protect. I expected to grow old amongst the gnarled roots and towering tree trunks, my weathered skin indistinguishable from the bark. But fate, it seemed, had a more outlandish plan in store. It began with the birds. Not the usual cacophony, not the vibrant flashes of macaws or the squawks of clumsy toucans. This was a panicked exodus, a great flapping wave that darkened the sky like a sudden storm. Animals that usually bickered and competed stampeded past our hidden village, their eyes wide with a terror that made my stomach clench. It was as though the very jungle was trying to flee from something unseen, unknowable. The elders gathered, their faces drawn tight beneath the vibrant war paint they rarely donned except in dire times. A sense of unease prickled the air, thick as the humidity. I was barely 20 then, yet years of jungle warfare had honed my instincts, and they screamed danger in a language more ancient than words. My father, usually a stoic mountain of a man, had a haunted look. He gripped his spear, not like a weapon, but a lifeline. Something is coming, he said, his voice low, something that has silenced the very soul of the forest. We didn't have to wait long. The first sign wasn't an invasion force, but the sky itself being torn open. Streaks of light, too fast to be any natural thing, hurtled down from above. They ripped through the canopy, leaving trails of smoke and the acrid stink of burning leaves. Then came the thunderclaps, shockwaves that sent flocks of birds careening and made the mighty trees tremble. The attack, when it came, was unlike anything we'd ever imagined. Not men in camouflage toting guns, but things. Creatures sheathed in gleaming metal, their movements impossibly swift and jerky. They swept from the sky on craft that roared like angry hornets, spitting bursts of light that turned trees to ash and sent animals scattering in blind panic. For the first time in living memory, the balance of the jungle was not just disrupted, it was being shattered. And something deep within me, a primal instinct forged over generations, stirred restlessly. This wasn't a threat you could melt into the shadows against. It was an existential horror, a force that could wipe away all we knew in a heartbeat. My father's order was swift, tinged with a desperation that cut through our usual stoicism. Conceal the village. Disperse into the jungle. We will fight as we always have, not for victory, but to buy time. I wasn't sure for whom we were buying time. Our tribe was dwindling, our young too few, our elders too worn by the constant weight of their vigil. Yet, in that moment, to surrender wasn't an option. Perhaps it was foolish, maybe it was a futile clinging to a way of life already slipping away. But it was ours. So I did as commanded. I helped camouflage the huts until they blended seamlessly with the vegetation, urged the younglings and their mothers deeper into the jungle towards our most secret sanctuaries. I took up my spear, my body thrumming with a strange mix of terror and grim determination. This wouldn't be a duel of cunning and ambush. This would be war laid bare, and we were desperately outmatched. We watched our world burn. From the carefully concealed vantage point of a giant strangler fig, I witnessed the desecration of our home. Those metallic beings moved with relentless efficiency, cutting swathes through the vegetation with a dispassion that sent chills down my spine. Their weapons weren't just extensions of themselves, they were instruments of annihilation. Every burst of light was a tree reduced to splinters, a sanctuary destroyed, a life extinguished. I'd faced down jaguars, bushmasters, even the occasional desperate poacher, but nothing prepared me for the sheer scale of this. The jungle, usually a vibrant, untamable force, seemed to cower beneath the onslaught. The air throbbed with a mechanical whine, a violation that echoed in my skull and set my teeth on edge. Yet, amidst the chaos, a strange sort of clarity descended upon me. The oselotl were born of this jungle, forged by it, we wouldn't go down without a fight. It might not be the one we were trained for, but desperation is a powerful motivator. We were as much a part of this ecosystem as the sunlight and the rain, and I'd be damned if I let us become some footnote in an alien textbook. My father materialized beside me, a specter woven from shadows and painted rage. He gestured towards a group of the metallic invaders, methodically hacking a path toward what I knew was a hidden spring, a source of lifeblood for countless creatures. We didn't need words. We were two halves of the same feral thing. The ambush was born of desperation, not strategy. Leaping from the concealing foliage, we unleashed a hail of darts, their tips dipped in the potent venom of the dendrobate's frog. It was a tactic designed to incapacitate poachers, not armored aliens. And yet, the surprise, the sudden flash of movement from where they expected only mindless vegetation, did the trick. Two attackers crumpled, their metallic bodies twitching then going still. The others whirled around, scanning the undergrowth. I pressed myself flat against the branch, heart thundering against my ribs. Their eyes, glowing slits in their featureless helmets, passed right over me. The years of training, of becoming not just part of the jungle, but an extension of it, paid off. My father was less fortunate. A burst of sizzling energy caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. He let out a guttural roar, more wounded animal than man, then charged. An act of pure defiance, of raging against a storm he knew he couldn't outlast. They tore him apart. I watched through a blur of tears and rage, the mighty warrior who'd taught me everything reduced to a bloody ruin in the space of a few heartbeats. My world tilted, the jungle itself seemed to scream in echo of my own loss. In that moment, something fractured within me. The disciplined warrior, a guardian, gave way to a howling, grief-stricken beast that knew only the need for vengeance. Blindly, I charged. My spear was useless against their armor, it shattered on impact. I flung myself at the nearest one, fueled by a feral despair too raw to be considered courage. We crashed to the undergrowth in a whirlwind of thrashing limbs. It was stronger, faster, encased in an unyielding shell, but I had the madness of loss on my side. Teeth found purchase, sinking into the strange, pliable material between its armored plates. I tasted something acrid and oily, clamped down harder. The creature screeched, a high-pitched, unnatural sound that set off a fresh wave of fury within me. We rolled, crushing saplings and ferns, ignoring the stabs of pain as its bladed limbs raked my skin. Something vital must have given way, because its movements grew sluggish, spasmodic. Seizing my chance, I snatched one of its weapons, a cylinder of cold metal that pulsed in my hand. I didn't understand its mechanics, but instinct took over. I pointed it at the remaining invaders, unleashing bursts of searing energy, mimicking what I'd seen them do. Not with precision, but with a fury that burned away any semblance of fear. Another one fell, then another, before the rest vanished into their roaring metal insects, leaving a trail of scorched earth and fallen comrades in their wake. I stood amidst the wreckage, chest heaving, the alien weapon still clutched in my bleeding hands. It felt wrong, a perversion, but its destructive power thrummed with a terrible allure. The battle was won, if you could even call it that. My father lay broken, our little skirmish a meaningless blip in this sweeping invasion. Yet, amidst the ashes, something had shifted irrevocably. I stumbled back towards the ruins of our village. The invaders, in their arrogance, hadn't searched too thoroughly. Our women and children were safe, their eyes wide with a strange blend of terror and awe. I was no longer their protector. Bearing the weapon that had orphaned them, I was something alien, something monstrous. The looks in their eyes hurt more than any wound the invaders could have inflicted. That night, cloaked by darkness, I slipped away from the only home I'd ever known. The oselotl had always been a tribe of ghosts, but now I was truly alone. The weapon, a twisted trophy, became my constant companion. I studied it with a mix of revulsion and grim fascination, learning its deadly rhythm, honing its destructive potential. I moved through the jungle, not in harmony with it as before, but like a vengeful blight. My war was no longer about preservation, but retribution. I became the thing they feared. Every ambush, every explosion meant to drive these invaders back into the stars, was an offering to my father's unquiet spirit. News of the jungle wraith, the lone warrior wielding alien fire, spread. Whispers slithered through the ravaged undergrowth, carried by survivors who told tales of a demon clad in shadows and wielding a stolen storm. It became a twisted sort of hope for those pushed to the brink. The invaders made me their obsession. They hunted me, laid elaborate traps, unleashed drones that buzzed like monstrous insects in their relentless pursuit. That only spurred me on. I used their arrogance against them, luring them into the heart of the jungle where its ancient power was still absolute. I learned not just their weapons, but their tactics, turning their aggression into their undoing. I knew I was becoming a legend, something as monstrous and uncanny as the invaders themselves. The tales grew more exaggerated with every retelling, and part of me withered beneath the weight of it. The oselotl had been protectors, bound to something larger than themselves. I was adrift, fueled by rage and little else. And yet, the invaders faltered. Their assaults grew less brazen, their grip on the jungle seemed to loosen. Word reached me, in fragments carried by the wind and the call of birds, of other pockets of resistance. Not just tribes hidden in the green vastness, but city folk, hardened survivors striking from the ruins they once called home. My war was ugly, brutal, yet it had served a purpose. It had shown them that this world wouldn't submit so easily. That, even in the face of overwhelming force, a flicker of defiance could spread like wildfire. Perhaps that's what my father had always known, what his final charge had been meant to ignite. I am a broken thing, a warrior without a tribe. My hands are stained with the oily blood of the invaders, forever marked by the alien technology I wield. Yet, as the echoes of battle begin to fade, and the first tentative shoots of resistance reach towards the sunlight, I feel something stir within the hollowness. It's not hope, not really. It's a stubborn sort of resolve. Maybe a legend is all I have left to be, or maybe it can be a beacon in the long darkness to come. They found me not in a blaze of glory, but curled up beneath the sprawling roots of an ancient kapok tree. I'd been tracking a squad of their hunter-killer drones, nights of relentless pursuit wearing on even my hardened body. Sleep, when it came, was a dangerous luxury. This time, it was an ambush. A flash of light blinded me, the sickly sweet tang of a paralytic agent filling my nostrils. When I could see again, I was trussed up in some shimmering energy field, a dozen alien weapons trained on me. Even the cold cylinder in my grip felt useless, a dead thing in the face of their overwhelming technology. They were a strange breed, tall, spindly, with skin an unsettling shade of grey. Their movements lacked the fluidity of humans, replaced by a jerky precision that hinted at augmetics woven seamlessly into their bodies. But it was their eyes that held me, large, black pools mirroring the interstellar void. Instead of the rough cell I expected, they brought me to their mothership, a monstrosity of gleaming metal hanging in the sky like an obscene parody of the moon. The air inside hummed and throbbed, laced with the chemical tang of manufactured oxygen and something else. A constant background thrum that set my teeth on edge. They interrogated me, their voices like the clicking of insects, filtered through some translator device. The usual barrage: what was my objective, how many more like me, where was the main resistance base? I gave them nothing, not out of bravery, but a simple, spiteful satisfaction in denying them even a scrap of information. Days blurred by in the sterile cell. I was a specimen to them, a curiosity to be dissected, analyzed. They ran scans on my body, poked and prodded, their touches impersonal as if I were a lab animal. It was humiliating, but beneath it burned a cold rage. They might have broken my world, but they wouldn't break me so easily. It was the 7th night, if I still marked time correctly, when the ship lurched violently. Alarms blared, those huge, soulless eyes flickered with surprise, then something like confusion. They'd grown complacent, convinced of their superiority, and now someone, or something, was rocking their little world. Through the narrow viewport in my cell, I witnessed a sight that made my battle-worn heart leap. Not a grand armada of human spaceships, no glorious counteroffensive, but something far stranger. The sky was ablaze with colors that shouldn't exist in nature: iridescent blues, shimmering pinks, and streaks of pulsating violet. Amidst this impossible aurora soared creatures that made their machines look clumsy and crude by comparison. They were immense, with sinuous bodies like eels woven from starlight and wings that stretched out like nebulae. They moved with a terrifying grace, shifting between dimensions as if space and time were mere playthings. The ship's defenses spat bursts of energy, insignificant pinpricks against their vast, shimmering forms. One of the creatures spiraled towards the ship, its body shimmering, dissolving and reforming. It passed through the solid metal hull as if it were nothing but mist. A blast of blue light pulsed outwards, and the far end of the corridor erupted in a shower of sparks and screams. Chaos reigned. My captors scattered, their usual rigid order collapsing in the face of something they couldn't comprehend. Amidst the confusion, my restraints flickered, weakened. It was a simple matter then, a desperate twist powered by adrenaline, to break free. The weapon, the cold weight in my hands, felt different in this moment. It had been a tool for revenge, a crude imitation of their destructive power. But now, seeing it bathed in the strange, celestial light filtering through the breached hull, I understood. It wasn't theirs at all. Some ancient, forgotten race had crafted these weapons, beings who might have been kin to the shimmering creatures tearing the invaders apart. I wasn't just some opportunistic scavenger, I was the inheritor of a legacy I barely fathomed. Power arced through me, a jolt not of violence, but of rightness. I aimed not at the fleeing aliens, but at the pulsing core of their ship. Their power source, their heart. The energy crackled along my arms, and with a roar that drowned out the screams and the alarms, I let it loose. The world went white. When I awoke, I was sprawled on a bed of leaves, my body aching but whole. The air was heavy with the sweet rot of the jungle, the familiar orchestra of birdsong a balm to my battered senses. I dragged myself to a muddy puddle, and the reflection that stared back was drawn, grimy, but undeniably my own. The ship, if it had crashed at all, was nowhere to be seen. My alien weapon was gone, leaving behind only the faintest tickle of warmth in my palm. As for those creatures wreathed in starfire, they vanished as abruptly as they'd come, leaving a sky scrubbed back to its usual blue, as if they'd been nothing more than a fever dream. I make no grand claims about having saved the world that day. The war, if you could even call it that, raged on. Those iridescent beings might have been saviors, or simply another force caught up in a conflict they didn't fully understand. But what lingered, what still does to this day, is the twist of fate, the dizzying change of perspective. I was never just a desperate survivor cobbling together borrowed power. All along, something far older, far greater pulsed beneath the surface. The oselotl, my people, have always known that the jungle held secrets beyond our understanding. Perhaps this was just one more, revealed in a blaze of impossible light. I returned to the ruins of our village, to the scattered remnants of my tribe. They looked at me with a mix of awe, fear, and something unreadable in their eyes. I am no longer their protector, not the warrior they knew. I am a conduit, a vessel for a power I still don't fully grasp. The jungle is as scarred as I am, but within that devastation, new growth pushes through. Life adapts, persists. Maybe we will too. The invaders may still roam our world, the celestial visitors might be myth or looming threat, and the future is as uncertain as the dancing shadows beneath the canopy. But there's a flicker deep down, a stubborn sort of defiance that echoes the pulse of that ancient energy. I once fought for the past, now I fight for whatever comes next.